Overlapping action should not only be applied to the hand that is waving or a piece of grass or a tail, but to the entire character. That is why our main assignment for this section will be the animation of a character turning. By creating this animation, you will learn how to apply overlapping action to different parts of the body: head, chest, hips, and legs. Since we haven't animated a full character before, we will be taking one step at a time, and we won't be animating hands in this assignment. Our main focus will be the spine, but in the upcoming section, we're going to start working with all the body parts of the character. Here you see the example of what we'll be creating. It's a fairly quick turn, but a lot of small changes are happening at different times. Now let's compare it to the same turn, but without any overlap. This turn looks very boring, stiff, and lifeless. So now you can see how much appeal the overlapping action adds to the same motion. Okay, let's move on to our task. Here we have our previous scene. We can now turn off the visibility for the arm swing display layer and turn on the visibility for the Woody controls and Woody Geo. Let's go to the perspective mode. Here we have our character, and just as before, we will be working with the NURBS curves, which our controls are made of, and we will be using the Auto Key option. Our tangents should be set to Auto Ease. Now we can select all the controls to check whether we have any keys on our timeline by mistake, which we don't, so now we can start posing our character. Let's go to the first frame and give our character a sort of a neutral standing pose. We can start with the main body control and bring the weight down. The foot on the left will be the one that is holding the weight, so let's push it back. The other foot will be in front of the body. Let's spread the feet a little bit apart. Rotate them. This foot will be rotated less because that one will be holding the weight. Don't forget the knees. In order to select the locators, which our knee controls are made of, we need to turn on the selectability for this question mark symbol. And now we can select the locators and position the knees the same way that our feet are facing. Bring the knees a little bit out. We should bring the weight of the body a little bit to the back as well. If we find the center of the body and imagine a line going down to the ground, it should be somewhere around the foot that is holding the weight. We can also bring the body more to the side where the holding foot is. Because we know that this leg is holding the weight, we can now position the hips according to that. Let's rotate the left side up. Not too much, just a little bit. This will be a relaxed pose, so bring the hips more inside. And we also need to rotate them to the left in this axis so that the hips have a similar angle to the feet position. If you remember the contrapposto principle, we need to pose the chest to the opposite side in all the axes than our hips are having. So if we rotate the hips to this side, we should rotate the chest a little bit to the right this way. Then let's bring the left shoulder down so that it has an opposite direction than the hips. And also because we brought the hips up, we need to rotate the chest down so that we have a stretch on one side and compression on the other. As well as here, we have a compression on this side and stretch on the opposite side. Now let's position the head. We want our Woody to be looking this way, a little bit up. Okay, let's select all the controls and hit the S on the first frame just to be sure that everything is keyed and we have our first pose saved. Now that I look at this pose, I think that the legs are actually spread too much apart. Doesn't really look relaxed. So let's bring them a little bit in. This way as well. And let's bring the weight more up. I think this looks better and more neutral. Don't forget to check your pose from different angles from time to time. Okay, now everything seems to be in the right place. We have our first pose. Now we need to create the last one, which will be placed somewhere around frame 18. Basically, we need to create an opposite pose than what we currently have. Now the weight will be placed on the opposite foot, so let's bring the body to the right. And more to the front. Since the feet position won't change, just the center of weight, and because this foot now will be holding the weight, we need to bring the center of the body towards this foot and check that from all sides. Next, we can rotate the hips to the opposite side, so now the right side will be going up. Because the upper part of the body will be facing the right side, the hips will be affected by this motion a little bit. So we need to rotate them to the right as well, even though the feet are staying placed in the same spot. Since we brought the weight to the right and rotated the hips, this foot is now stretching too much, so we need to bring it up. We can do that by using the foot roll channel in the foot control channel box to bring the heel up. Okay, now it is no longer overstretching. We position the lower part of the body. Let's move up. Select the chest control and rotate it to the right. Bring the shoulder down, since before the left shoulder was lower and we want the opposite thing. Finally, rotate the head. And we still want to be able to see this eye a bit, so this angle is good enough, I think. We also want our character to have his head rotated higher after the turn. Now, let's look around our character to check whether everything is in the right place. We could bring the chest a little bit lower. Alright, I think we're done with this pose. Let's select everything and make a key. Since we have our two main poses on frame 1 and 18, let's select all the controls again and add a couple more keyframes. Just like we did in most of our previous animations, here we want to add a hold at the beginning of the animation. Let's have a 6-frame hold, and on frame 7, let's have the same pose as we do on frame 1. So when we are on the first frame, middle mouse click on frame 7 and hit the S to create the same pose from frame 1. Now we have a 6-frame hold for the viewer to be able to see the beginning of the animation and catch up with all the details. Since we created our last pose on frame 18, we have another 6-frame hold at the end, just like we have at the beginning, for the same reason, so that our viewers would be able to see the beginning and the end of our animation in time. If we were to have the same pose on the last frame as we do on frame 18, our viewer's eye would manage to notice that our character's motion ends very abruptly and mechanically. So at the end, even though we still want to have a hold, we need to create a moving hold with a small change in our character values. What we can do now, without creating a new pose by hand, is to shift-select the keyframe on frame 18 and move it to the last frame. Then go a couple of frames before the last pose, and while our controls are still selected, make a key there, so that we save a pose which looks almost the same as the last one, but with a tiny difference which creates a small movement. Finally, shift-select the keyframe which we just made and move it back to frame 18, where we had our initial final pose. Now we can see that during these 6 frames, our character is moving a little bit, and just enough so that it wouldn't look like it came to a stop unnaturally. What we have here now is a 6-frame hold at the beginning for the viewer to catch the beginning of our animation. Then the character turn, and finally we have a moving hold at the end. If we scrub the animation, we can see that our character's different body parts are turning at the same time. And if we play the animation, we see that we have the main motion, but it's quite boring and lifeless. So the next step will be to add some overlap, and we'll do that in the next lesson.